On this page, these are going to be questions where I haven't given you the slope and I haven't given you the y-intercept. So finding the y-intercept is exactly like what we just did previously. And finding the slope, luckily, we have a slope formula. So when you go to solve for the slope, the first thing you have to do is write down the formula. So m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So with your 2 points, this is x1, y1, and this is x2, y2. So y2 is 1, subtract y1 is 2, over x2 is -3, subtract, watch the signs, subtract x1, which is -6. So using your calculator or your awesome integer skills, 1 minus 2 is -1 over -3 subtract -6. Remember the negative, subtract the negative. This here, subtracting the negative becomes a positive. So that is really -3 plus 6, which is +3. So your slope is -1/3. Now it becomes a question just like we did on the previous page. Now we know the slope. We don't know the y-intercept. So to find the y-intercept, you do the exact same work that we did previously. So the slope is going to be -1/3. And if you don't know the slope, you have to know another point. In this case, there's 2 points. Using either point will get you the right answer. You need to choose which point looks better. So a couple things to think about. Really doesn't matter which one you use, but a couple of pieces of advice. People tend to do better if there's no negatives. So if possible, like over here, choose the point without negatives. That's one piece of advice. Because the more negatives there are, the more chances people are going to make a mistake. The second option would be try to pick a point where the x value is a multiple of the denominator so that we can, it ends up eliminating the fractions. Now in this case, both of them are multiples of the denominator, so it doesn't really matter which point you pick. In this case, there's no advantage to picking either one of the 2 points. So let's just pick this one. So this is your x and this is your y. I guess another advantage would be if there's no advantage to one or the other, then some people pick the one that has lower numbers because maybe they're a little bit easier to work with. So the x is -3 and the y is 1. So the 1 goes in for the y. Just to remind you, this is y equals mx plus b. So the 1 goes in for the y. The -1/3 goes in for the m. The -3 goes in for the x. Watch your negatives. First thing is to multiply these 2 numbers. So -1/3 times -3 is +1 plus b. So now we're going to subtract 1 from both sides to isolate b. So that makes b equal to 0. So the y-intercept is 0, which means technically we don't have to write it. So your final answer is y equals the slope, -1/3 x, plus the y-intercept, which is 0, which we don't have to write. So this is x1, y1. This is x2, y2. So when you substitute, y2 is 0, minus y1 is 3, over x2 is negative 6, minus x1, which is 6. Now, a lot of people are going to think that negative 6 minus 6 is 0. So be careful with your negatives. Use your calculator. I don't mean to be a calculator pusher, but I don't want you getting the wrong answer because of a careless mistake. So that becomes negative 3 over negative 12. And now it needs to be put into lowest terms. And don't forget they are both negative. So that is 1 over 4 in lowest terms. So your slope is 1 over 4. Now you're going to pick one of the points and substitute it in for x and y. So we talked about the advantages of using some of the points. An advantage to using this point is that there's no negative. The other advantage would be to pick a point whose x value is a multiple of the denominator of the slope. Well, that doesn't happen to be either one of these. So really the only advantage of using this point is that there's no negatives. So we're going to substitute this point in for x and y. So the x is going to be 6 and the y is going to be 3. All right, so this is y equals mx plus b. So the 3 gets substituted in for the y. The 1/4 gets substituted in for the m. The 6 gets substituted in for the x. And because the x value is not a multiple of the denominator of the slope, you're going to end up with fractions. You have to be able to use your fraction skills, either in your head or using a calculator. If you do this in your head, then 1 over 4 times 6, you change the 6 to a fraction, 6 over 1, and you multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. So 1 times 6 is 6, over 4 times 1 is 4, and in lowest terms, that's 3 over 2. If you use your calculator, you just have to make sure that you leave your answer as an improper fraction or a proper fraction. No decimals, no mixed numbers. So that gives you 3 equals 3 over 2 plus b. So now you're going to subtract 3 over 2 from both sides. And again, use your fraction button or use your math skills. So 3 subtract 3 over 2. You need a common denominator. So the common denominator is 2, so you're going to multiply top and bottom by 2. So that gives you 6 over 2 minus 3 over 2, which is 3 over 2. So that becomes the y-intercept. It's just a coincidence that it's 3 over 2, which is what it was before. And then now your equation. Keep y's and x's as y's and x's. Substitute in the slope, which is 1/4 x plus the y-intercept, which is 3 over 2. So the top you've already done. We've already figured out how to use the slope formula. The bottom is what we did on the previous page.